I'm elated. I mean, how would one feel? It's one of these things that only happens to very few people, if they're lucky, once in their life. So I'm elated. For me, psychologically, I'm very much an Indian. I think when I say my country, it's always India. So for me, there's no choice there. It's essentially programmed into me. So I see myself through the eyes of Indians. My parents were not poor. I mean, we were very average middle class family, academics. But my grandfather, by some accident, happened to have built a house literally next door to one of Kolkata's largest slums. So in our previous book, we actually write about the fact that I grew up playing with the slum kids. I had very first-hand experience of poverty. I was very jealous of them. They didn't have to go to school. Early years in Kolkata, surely, but also, I mean, that sort of makes it kind of incumbent on me to at least engage with poverty. But I think my parents were a huge influence. I mean, we had discussion of things like poverty at home all the time, and what its consequences are, what its causes are, and they would often be based on, last night, this woman had to run out screaming because she was being beaten by her husband or something. So we had discussions of the kind of the lives of the poor at home, and the facts were pretty evident to us. So that we could, I think, the interpretations are often hard, but at least we always had discussions of what's going on, what is this fair, is this reasonable, are these lives blighted by the environment they have to live in. Always wanted to think of, and I think this is a natural urge for an economist, to think of it as being described by economic status. I absolutely feel that the psychological dimensions of poverty are extremely important. That people are, I think, the loss of dignity, the displacement, living in ugly places, living in violence. These are critical dimensions of poverty. And in that sense, I do feel that when I think of poverty, for example, in the US right now, I think it's usually associated with disempowerment, not just income poverty. People in the US who are classified as poor would be very middle class in India, but they lack dignity, they lack a sense of well-being. They are, and that's turning into extremely high mortality rates. Fast, the whites in the US are dying much faster now than they were dying 5 years ago. And that's not an accident. It's something to do with feeling disempowered. So I think dignity, the space for dignity, space for being in a comfort zone, these are important ideas related to poverty. Some minimum income, whether it was that scheme or not, is certainly something we should consider, because I think there are a bunch of people for whom there is enormous risk. They face suddenly everything in their life vanishes because there's too much rain or too little rain, or they suddenly the real estate, the bank collapses. Because the bank collapses, their building stops being built, therefore they lose their job. All of that risk needs to be mitigated somehow. We are subjecting people to enormous amount of risk, especially in this today's finance-driven, quite fragile economy. We were with the ILS closure. I'm sure a bunch of people suddenly lost their jobs, and I think having a safety net for those people is important. First, that there is no contradiction between having a well-functioning economy and being generous to the people who are worst off. I think the idea that high tax rates create extreme disincentives, there's no evidence for, in my view. I think that the high tax rates make people want to hide their money, but I think the government is getting better at finding it. So I do think that there is a sense in which what I deplore about the recent downturn and its reaction is more, I think the government had gone the right way in raising taxes on the rich, and then it was basically cut back because it's going to save the economy. I actually don't think it's going to save the economy. I think the government had the right idea, which is we should move towards a more generous welfare state funded by higher taxes on the rich. I think that is the way to a stable economy where people aren't, desperate. They're not losing their livelihoods right and left. I think that was the right direction, and I think in that general concept, I was supportive of the government's view, and I was disappointed that the taxes were rolled back. My view, people were looking for the leader who projected, a view of the nation that most spoke to them the most. You can see that the young, well-educated, urban people are the most likely to have voted for the NDA. And those are people who are not looking for handouts. They were not voting for handouts. They were voting for. I don't think they were voting for or against handouts. They were mostly interested in who's projecting a vision of a strong nation. Whatever my views on that be, I think there is a sense in which Mr. Modi constructed the most effective rhetoric, and maybe the Palakot incident didn't hurt because it sort of reinforced this particular factor. But I don't think that the election was fought on whether there should be handouts or not.